オークション、それは人間の夢と欲望を飲み込む世界。人々は至高の一品に熱狂し、今しかないという可能性にかける。ジュゼッペ・ガルネリ・フィリウス・アンドレア、落札金額1億円。ストラディバリウス・クロール、落札金額4億円。ストラディバリウス・レディ・ブラント、落札金額20億円。もはや権力の象徴ともいえる破格の金額がたった数日間で動く舞台。世界中の名器が集まるここロンドンでは年2回世界規模の弦楽器オークションが開催され、コレクター、演奏家、楽器商、ディーラー、財団から熱い注目を集めます。ロンドンは弦楽器奏者、業界関係者とは切っても切り離せない国際都市。イングレス&Hayday、ブロンプトンズ、アマティ、タリジオ、弦楽器専門の世界4大オークションハウスが揃う、いわば世界中の名器とお金と夢が交差する弦楽器の中心地。今回はそのイングレス&ヘイレイの全面協力、そして日本が誇るロンドン在住バイオリンディーラー梅沢博子さんにもご同行いただき、この欲望と夢が渦巻く弦楽器オークションの裏側に完全密着します。ロンドンで行われるオークションは毎年3月と10月の年2回ですが、オークション会社の人々はこの6つの工程を経てオークションを運営し続けています。まずはじめは出品受付。このオークションで楽器を売りたい人、つまり楽器の所有者から出品を依頼されるところから全てが始まります。ポールさん、出品受付はロンドンでしかやっていないんですか？日本からは遠すぎますよ。
I go to Japan once a year. Last week I was in Germany, in Stuttgart, Frankfurt, Cologne, and then Brussels in Belgium, and all of those places we were meeting clients. So we're doing this all over the world, sort of all the time, these visits. So yeah, property will come in from many different places.
うわー、ハードなお仕事。でもきっとストラディバリウスとかガルネリとかそういう超高価格帯の楽器しか受け付けていないんでしょう？
The market that we're in, really, we start at about £4,000 in terms of what violins and cellos, violas we will take. So that's our entry level, and if people have things at that sort of price, we can obviously help them. At the other end, obviously, Stradivari's, Guarneri del Gesù, we obviously see those as well. That's, very much the top end of the market.
へえ、意外にも幅広い価格帯の楽器を扱っているんですね。でも当然のことながら出品を依頼されたからといって全ての楽器を無条件で受け付けるわけではありません。次のステップは鑑定。鑑定ってどんなことをするんですか？
Yeah, authentication is about proving to the best of one's ability that an instrument is by the maker that it is meant to be by. And a lot of that is down to just visual expertise, having seen many of these makers before, many examples before, and to be able to recognize them and say, no, those features are just not right, or so on and so forth.
でも楽器が誰の手によっていつ作られたのかって楽器のラベルを見ればすぐに分かりそうな気もするんですが。
We tend not to look at the labels in the first instance because the labels are the easiest thing to change for people that are making, Obviously, another problem that we have is that people will have an old violin and will change the label to something else in order to kind of, how do we put it, upgrade it, shall we say. So we're quite used to looking at violins which are one thing, which have a label in them which doesn't match. So we tend not to look in the first instance at the label because that is typically the least reliable thing on a violin. We tend to look at the body, the outline, the varnish, all of these things are what we respond to and recognise. So we're looking for certificates as well that come, most of the top level instruments, Stradivari's, Guarneri's, Marti's, so they will come with historical documents already, which usually prove that those instruments are right. Not always. You can find sometimes that expertise has changed and mistakes may have been made in the past, but usually those sort of documents are quite reliable. And I think anyone buying a sort of top level violin would expect it to come with a certificate from one of the main experts in the field.
ふむふむ、なるほど。基本的には鑑定書と人の目で見て判断するということですね。
There are other things that we can do as well, such as dendrochronology is something that we use a lot these days. So that is the measuring of the tree rings on the front of a violin. So, through analysing many different violins, you build up statistical patterns which show that the violins are related to each other, the wood is related to each other, and you can find the date that the wood was growing and the date that the wood was, felled, the tree was felled. And that's a very useful part of trying to analyse which instruments are by which makers. So for example, if you've got a violin that is trying to tell you, the label, let's say, says the violin was made in 1860, for example, and then you do a dendrochronology and the dendrochronology tells you that the tree was still growing in 1860, you know immediately that that label in that instrument just can't be right. That's a very sort of basic example of how dendrochronology can work. So you can say with certainty that label is incorrect. And as you can imagine, that's fairly good statistical proof that an instrument is authentic. There are lots and lots of copies out there. People have been making copies of the main violin makers for centuries. If you look at Stradivari and Guarneri and Amati, the main historical makers in our market, they have always been kind of copied, not necessarily faked, but copied because people have used the models.
ちょっと混乱してきました。コピーとフェイクというのは具体的には何が違うんですか？
I mean, strictly, I guess the definition is a fake is something which is made to deceive people that it isn't what it is. There was a family of makers in the UK, the Voller brothers. They were very skilled violin makers, but they were, not necessarily working to the most ethical ideals, and they were making instruments in order to deceive. Sometimes there was a famous court case about a Voller brother, which was actually, meant to be a Strad, but it was a Voller brother. The Balfour Strad, I think it was called. Yeah, they were trying to make instruments in order to make money and deceive people. That's a fake. Vollers have come to be rather appreciated. I mean, sort of, 100 odd years passes and Vollers are very much appreciated in their own right these days as excellent instruments. But at the time, they were certainly making what we would term as fakes. There are instances where you will have part of a violin, like a back, that's been removed from another old instrument, and then they would put a new front on it. So they were making sort of composite instruments out of parts in order to kind of deceive. That was your example of what a fake is. But copies are really where a maker is inspired by a particular maker or instruments. There's a Viome here, which is a Stradivari copy. There's a Geisenhof here, which is a Stradivari copy essentially. These are makers that have seen the Stradivari look, the Stradivari model, for example, and said, yeah, I want to create something along those lines, but they're not making something which is designed to fool people.
なるほど。フェイクは騙す目的、コピーはいわゆるオマージュということですね。ところでこの鑑定の後にはもう一つ大切な工程があります。コンディションチェックです。
Yeah, condition is an incredibly important part of the process. I guess it's authenticity, then condition are the two most important things. So, the older a violin is, the more likely it is to have, through use, encountered some kind of damage. I suppose there is a sort of grading of what is bad damage for us. I guess the worst piece of damage would be a sound post crack, a crack in the back of the violin on the sound post. Typically in financial terms, that's a sort of 50% reduction in value. So it's a big deal, and you really need to be able to say that there is or isn't one in an instrument. So we will look very carefully around the sound post area on the back of the violin. We'll look outside and inside, with lamps to look inside to see if there's been any, disturbance, any patches put in there through restoration. Good restorers are very, very capable of hiding things very well, making things look like they didn't exist. So you have to be able to see past that. It's not just about sound post cracks. Obviously, that's just one of the things. So the front of the violin tends to get more damage than the back. So you would expect in an 18th century violin there to be quite a few old cracks restored. When you look inside, there are little patches put in there to secure it as well. It's quite normal, but it's a thing of degree, really. If it's has the more damage, the more financial impact that will have. How else do we look for this? Well, we can do CT scans on very expensive violins. It's worth doing a CT scan because on a CT scan you can see cross sections of the wood, and you can see where these patches are. You can see cracks, you can see glue, you can see woodworm is another thing that we have to be very careful of, and these things can be very cleverly disguised. But yeah, I guess the golden standard for a top violin these days would be to do a CT scan, where nothing much can hide away with a CT scan. It's expensive doing that sort of work, so it's not something that would be financially viable on lower value instruments, but on higher value violins it's sort of something one has to do these days.
楽器の CT スキャンってまさか人間の病院に行くんですか？
We used to go to the doctors sort of 10 years ago, and they would sort of fit us in between patients, but the CT scanners that they use for humans are not so powerful. So these days we tend to use places where they have much more powerful CT scanners. There's a place that we use outside of London in High Wycombe, and they scan all sorts of things. Violins is just a very small part of what they do. They'll scan sort of Formula One engines, they'll scan sort of aeroplane, they'll do military things. They do all sorts of stuff.
へえ、現代技術がコンディションチェックに役立っているんですね。
We have another technique that we use, infrared light. So we will put some infrared lights inside a violin. You use an adapted camera to take a picture of what light is coming out through the plates of the violin. Not as good as CT scanning, but is very, very helpful, which that's particularly good for showing if there is any worm inside the back, right? Worm runs, not live worm, but sort of where beetles get into the instruments, they get into the wood, they eat tracks out inside, it can weaken the wood, and a lot of it you can't see from the outside, but with an infrared camera and picture you can see where they've been.
こうした複数の作業を経て楽器の正体が明らかになり、価値や値段が決まるんですね。ものすごい作業です。出品楽器が揃ってきたら次はカタログ制作です。ポールさん、カタログにはどんな情報が載っているんですか？
We have a range of violins, bows, cellos, violas in every catalogue. The most important thing, first off, is to know who made an instrument. So your measurements will describe what the label says. We will also say what certificates of authenticity come with an instrument. If people want more information than is described in the catalogue, they'll come to us and say, look, can we have a condition report for the instrument? Can we have an infrared scan? What more can you tell us? What more do we know personally about an instrument that we can then give them?
楽器の撮影もこのお店で行っているんですか？
Yeah, we do. Downstairs here we have a photo studio. We'll have a photographer come in on a sort of more ad hoc basis to use the photo studio.
イングラス&ヘイデイでは楽器や弓以外のコレクターズアイテムも出品していて、ハイフェッツの写真なども出品されています。今回のオークションで私が注目しているのはこの2丁です。ジェンナーロ・ガリアーノとカミリオ・カミリ。まずこちらは制作者名、ジェンナーロ・ガリアーノ。18世紀イタリアを代表する名工の一人で、弦楽器製作の名門ガリアーノ一族の制作者です。この FL はフラリッシュトの略語表記で、だいたいこの期間に活動してたよの意味。 C はサーカ、約何年頃の略語表記です。そしてこちらはナポリで1783年に作られたバイオリン。次のこの表記は中のラベルがオリジナル当時のラベルとして残っているよという説明です。裏板の長さは14インチ 35.7 センチ。そしてここも大きな価値ポイント。これはネックが当時のままのものが残っているよという意味です。古い楽器はネック交換や改造されていることが多いため、オリジナルのネックが保存しているということは状態の希少さとして強めに書かれやすいポイントです。そしてこちらは書類証明関係です。この楽器過去にちゃんと鑑定評価されていますよの履歴です。こちらは有名ディーラー鑑定の名前です。証明書がありますね。そしてこちらは評価書、このくらいの価値ですよという書類のコピーがついています。そしてこれも超有名どころ、複数回にわたって評価されていることが分かります。予想落札価格は18万ポンドから25万ポンド、約3700万から5000万円といったところでしょうか。ちなみにこの金額はあくまで目安です。落札金額は上下しますし、ここにバイヤーズプレミアムという名称の落札手数料、そして税金、輸送保険などが載るので、実際の支払いはもう少し高くなるイメージです。このガリアーノをざっくり解説すると、当時のラベルと当時のネックが残っている超希少な生き残り個体、しかも有名鑑定家の書類がずらっとついてる楽器、市場にあるガリアーノの中でもこれは別格なのです。そしてもう一つ、カミッロ・カミッリのバイオリン。カミッロ・カミッリ、バイオリンはじめチャンネルを隅から隅まで見てくださっている方は聞き覚えがあることでしょう。奥村愛さんが所有している楽器の制作者でもあります。これは過去の所有者の名前。この場合はエミール・メンデレスの所蔵品だったということが書いてあります。エミール・メンデレスはフランスの名バイオリニストです。マントバで1739年に作られたこちらのバイオリン。中のラベルにはカミッリがマントバで1739年に作ったよと書いてあることが示されています。裏板の長さは 35.3 センチ。そしてこの楽器は何より書類が強い。超有名鑑定家バトロの鑑定書がついて、さらに購入時のレシートもついています。20世紀前半、パリで超有名だった弦楽器店カレッサ・エ・フランセのレシート付き。宛名はメンデルスの父モーリスさん宛て。これは激アツです。いつどこで誰に売られたのか確かな証拠になります。さらにメンデルスから次の持ち主レイモンドさんへのお手紙、そしてさらにレイモンドさんから次の持ち主へのメモ。なんという貴重な資料でしょうか。物語のバトンが紙でつながってますね。こちらはエミール・メンデレスは子供の頃から神童で国際的に活躍した演奏家でなど、エミール・メンデレスのプロフィールが書かれています。予想落札価格は8万ポンドから12万ポンド、約1600万円から2500万円といったところでしょうか。この2つの楽器は果たして落札されるのでしょうか。カタログが完成した瞬間、楽器は情報から体験へ。次のステップはいよいよ実際に楽器を見て触れて思想できるビューイングです。ポールさん、ビューイングはどこでやっているんですか
？You know, the room that we're sat in here now for approximately a month prior to the auction, musicians will be coming in here, collectors booking appointments to come in here and look through and play on the instruments that they're interested in. So that's sort of in-house viewing that we do here. And then just prior to the auction, we go to the Royal Overseas Club and we have a big gallery that we use basically for sort of 2 days. People will come in, all the instruments are laid out, they can try them and look at them, and it's a busy affair.
ビューイングは入札する予定がなくても誰でも入れるんですか？
The public viewing at the Royal Overseas League is open to anyone that wants to come in, and more bespoke viewing that we do here, people make an appointment to come in and have a look.
なんだかすごく高級感があって敷居が高いんですが、ドレスコードとかありますか？
No dress code at all, no.
それなら私も入れるということですよね。そうと決まれば早速行ってきます。ここがビューイング会場のロイヤルオーバーシーズリーグ。バッキンガム宮殿のすぐ近く、ロンドンの一番格式高い中心地に位置しています。なんだかちょっと入りにくいですが、勇気を出して入ってみます。こんにちは。ビューイングはイングルスヘイデイ以外の他のオークションハウスも同じ時期に合同でこの会場で行っていて、会社ごとの複数のエリアに分かれています。イングルスヘイデイはこっちですね。さあ早速行ってみましょう。中は弦楽器の音色広がる美しい熱狂。たくさんの楽器が机にずらっと並べられています。この中にも数千万円超えの楽器が普通にコロンと並べられているので、ちょっぴりドキドキしています。楽器以外のコレクターズアイテムもこちらで見ることができます。たくさんの人が疾走していますね。あ、こちらにはバイオリンキッズもいます。良い楽器と出会えますように。こちらは弓コーナー。ディーラーとお見受けする方がじっくりと弓を見ています。私、初めての風景でただただ圧倒されておりますが、日本人の方でしょうか。少しお話をお伺いさせてください。こちらは大阪天満橋エリアの弦楽器専門店、鈴木弦楽器の代表取締役社長、鈴木真也さんです。本日は買い付けにいらっしゃったんですか？
仕入れと勉強とっていう目的で、来させてもらいました。
今回お目当ての楽器はありますでしょうか？
これからちょっと情報を持ち帰って、ホテルで整理しながら考えようかなと思います。
鈴木さん、ありがとうございます。鈴木さんとお話ができて緊張がほぐれてきたので、私も今回注目のジェンナーロ・ガリアーノとカミリオ試奏してみようかなと思います。どちらもいい音。なんか視線を感じる。イングラスヘイデイの鑑定士、ライナーさんです。ウインクいただきました。ありがとうございます。ここまで出品受付、鑑定、ビューイング、たくさんの方にお目見えしてきた楽器たちがいよいよ次の舞台へ入札です。オークションって入札者がバチバチに競り合ってハンマーが鳴って落札者決定ってイメージありますが、実際のところはどうなんでしょうか？
So all of our bidding happens online these days. Since COVID, we've only been running auctions online.
なるほど。今は完全オンライン入札なんですね。今すぐ入札したいって思ったらいきなりできるものなんですか？
It's not possible. You have to register to bid in the auction. You've got to register online through our platform. They will ask for some personal details, ID, that kind of thing, and then you'll be approved to actually use the platform on the bidding day. I mean, they were fun, old-style auctions, but you have to imagine the transaction for each instrument taking place in the process of like a minute, whereas online it takes days now, so it's much calmer.
もう昔のようなライブオークションはやらないのですか？
No, I don't think we will. I mean, I was brought up with live auctions. Tim used to take the auctions. I used to be on the telephone speaking to clients and all those things. It's great fun. But I have to say, the time pressures of a live auction, when you're operating it with clients from around the world, there'll be people in the Far East, there'll be people in Australia bidding, people in the US, Europe, all of those things, when you're calling somebody up and saying, "Oh, are you ready to bid?" and it's like 2 a.m. for them. So much is unpredictable. The phone lines can get cut off. It's quite a stressful environment. The auction online is, there's no real pressure in the same way, and it allows people to really know what they're doing, make their minds up, plan, much more comfortable. So I think we will absolutely stick to doing online auctions. It gets more coverage from a wider range of bidders as well.
確かにオンラインの方がメリットが大きいですね。さて、数日間にわたる入札を経て、ついに今落札者が決定します。私の注目していた楽器たちはどうでしょうか。ガリアの21万6000ポンド、約4500万円です。カミリはどうでしょうか。落札者なし、まさかの結末です。入札はあったんですが、最低落札価格に届かなかったので、今回は売却に至らずという結果です。落札されなかった楽器はどうなってしまうんですか？
I mean, it does happen, obviously. Typically, if an instrument doesn't sell in the auction, we will wait to see if there are people that maybe didn't bid in the sale that would be interested in talking about it afterwards. That sometimes happens. Or we will speak to the owner and say, look, well, why don't we give us a little rest, wait for another auction to come along, maybe amend the estimate slightly, to just give it a bit of a better chance and re-enter it into another sale.
売却のサポートを続けることもポールさんたちのお仕事なんですね。落札者が決まれば最後のステップ、引き渡しとなります。
So when it's sold after auction, obviously payment is the first crucial thing to achieve. We will request payment from buyers, and typically that happens sort of between hours to about sort of 10 days after the auction. Payment occurs. People will either then come to collect their violin personally, or they will ask us to arrange transportation. And coming back to again what we were saying earlier about it's a very, very global market, obviously. There's a lot of transport, shipping involved in what we do. People will ask for a shipping quote, we will arrange for that. If instruments need export licenses, customs documents, all of those kind of things, we will have to arrange all of that. There's a lot of technicalities involved in these things, but fortunately our team have been doing this for years and really understand the best way to do all of these things.
落札後もたくさんのタスクがあり、そこに関わるそれぞれのプロフェッショナルが力を発揮して出品者、落札者を全力でサポートするんですね。ちなみに高価格帯の楽器も扱うイングラス&ヘイデイですが、落札された楽器はどんな人が使っているんですか？
Yes, I mean there's plenty of instruments out there being used by musicians in the great orchestras of the world. Hilary Hahn plays on one of our Vioms. Nikolai Schneider on a Guarneri del Gesù.
わあ、著名人ばかり。誰かの舞台を支えた一丁をまた次の演奏家の手に渡す。オークションには人と楽器が出会う特別な瞬間を担う役割があるんですね。ここで改めてポールさんに聞いてみました。オークションの魅力とは一体何ですか？
Yeah, it's people's expectations. People fall in love with instruments at auction, but they don't know whether they're actually going to win and succeed. So there's a lot of tension in that respect. People, have gone through a long process of trying a violin and is it for me, isn't it for me, do I have the money? And then finally thinking, yeah, okay, I'm going to commit to that instrument, to not necessarily know that you're going to win and at what level. So you imagine there's a lot of anticipation. But that's a good thing, and that the excitement that surrounds an auction is what makes the competition work. And there's a community of people as well who they bring in their colleagues and their friends, and it all builds into a big event. It's a big event for everybody in the business, and it all comes together in a single moment, more or less. And that's exciting.
その魅力があるからこそ、ポールさんはこの仕事を20年以上も続けているのかもしれませんね。そんなポールさんにも忘れられない楽器の記憶があるそうです。最後にその一本について聞かせてください。
We've had was the Norman Rosenberg collection, which we sold in 2023. Norman Rosenberg was a violinist and a dealer who'd been on the scene for decades, buying very, very carefully, very, very good expert living in North London. And when he passed away, his whole collection that remained was left intact. And Tim and I were called round to go to his house. It was just a room, smaller than this room, a room full of violins and bows that we had to goodness, it was sort of over 200 items. Work our way through, try and decide what they were, what every item was, what it's worth. Well, there was a Stradivari. It was a composite instrument, so it's made from different parts. There was a great rocker, Mantegazza viola, great Grancinos, Landolfis, wonderful Scarabotto violin. It was absolutely fascinating. It's the biggest sort of project we've ever had to do. It was a major event in the market as well. Everyone had known Norman for years. He'd been very secretive about his collection actually while he was alive, so people kind of had an idea of the scope and size of the collection, but nobody had actually seen it. I think Tim and I probably were the first people sort of ever, other than Norman, to see the whole Rosenberg collection. So it was a tremendous honour, and it was really fun. And the whole, musical violin market was really excited by it as well. Such a great opportunity. That will absolutely stand out in my memory. I'd be surprised if that's ever surpassed, or if there's another collection of that breadth that will ever come on the market in my lifetime.
鳥肌が立つようなすごいお話。今まで積み上げてきた信頼と実績があるからこそ託された役目ですね。誰かが生涯をかけて集めた音の歴史を責任を持って受け取り、次の持ち主へ手渡していく。オークションは値段を決める場所ではなく、その受け渡しをみんなで見届ける場所なのかもしれません。本日の動画いかがでしたでしょうか。今回の動画ではポールさんのお話のほんの一部をご紹介しました。実はこの何倍も深い話を1時間たっぷり語ってくださっています。そのノーカットバージョンをメンバーシップアカデミーで公開しています。オークションの裏側や楽器の見方、現場のリアルをじっくり聞きたい方はぜひご覧ください。概要欄から入れます。2025年もバイオリンはじめチャンネルを愛してくださりありがとうございます。また来年もよろしくお願いいたします。皆様良いお年をお迎えください。かな先生でした。またね。おまけ。
Very nice Greek restaurant across the road called Meraki. We often go there with clients. Foley's just across the road. Again, it's a nice fusion food there, really. Sort of Asian, European fusion food, which is really nice. And a particular favourite coffee place for our clients is Caffeine. It's called Caffeine with a K, which is sort of 2 minutes down the road. And some people come sort of just for that. Now, I'm looking for a good but not too expensive sushi restaurant to take my kids to, because they like sushi, but if you've got any advice on that at some point, do let me know.
It's a very good restaurant.
Sushi or
It's like
okay. Oh right, okay. Sort of. I know that.